this is a piece that took a very long time to get finished. There's over 400,000 beads in this, and each bead had to be put on individually. The piece started, I worked a lot, I did a lot of work at the time about the body, and I went to a bead store and I found beads that had a certain kind of color of what we associate with as skin color. And they also had a nice kind of matte finish, so they did have the look of skin, and even as it's beaded together now you can sort of see the texture that you might see on your own hands. I started the piece and it was labor intensive. I made one arm first, and then I made a second arm, and I sort of put it all together. But it was, and then it just kept going back in the drawer because I couldn't make any progress with it. It just took so long. And eventually I had a curator, a friend of mine, who said she wanted to show it in an exhibition. She gave me like 6 or 8 month lead time on it, and I got to work in earnest, really just getting it done. And it was horrible, and it was time consuming, and I can do about a square inch, like maybe in an hour and a half. So it just is very, very slow going. And when you think about how much surface area it takes to cover the body, and it's not a tiny body, so it was just, I hated doing it. Like it was not a labor of love. It was a labor. It was a task, an onerous task I had to get through on a daily basis. I ended up hiring a studio assistant to come in with me in my studio, and we just worked at it for several months, and I got it done like a week before the exhibition was on. So that was great, but I will never bead again. I've done my time beading. So you know, the work starts out as an idea, and then in the making it becomes something else. And so it was definitely meant to look like a garment, but it's a garment nobody will ever be able to wear because you can't get into it, because it's very rigid in the wrist, and you couldn't get your hand in that, even though it could potentially cover your hand. There's a tradition in anatomical drawing and art, and you often see the figure that has sort of, where the skin's been flayed off the figure, and you see the first layer of musculature, and the figure is holding up its own skin in a kind of way, an écorché, and so there's some of that in that. There's an idea of, you think about the kind of beading that gets done in fashion, so there's a sense of that to sort of to embellish sort of these beautiful dresses that are worn for very special occasions. And so I wanted to use that same kind of way of working to make a kind of everyday mundane skin that's just a woman's body, and the kind of beauty that comes from that. What else is there about this work? It's life size. I didn't have a pattern when I made this, so as I'm going, I'm taking measurements and trying to get, you know, the right scale in terms of going around the figure and from top to bottom, and so it's sort of figuring it out how to make it as I made it. It wasn't, you know, there are no instructions for these kinds of things. What else about this work? It's quite heavy. Like, it weighs over 20 pounds because it's glass beads, so that's something that looks like it's quite light when it's hanging there, but when you actually lift it up, there's some weight to it. There's a sense of the volume of it, or the weight of it. But yeah, when the works change in the making, and so they become something else. And this is not an easy piece. It's a little bit disagreeable. People are kind of like, there's almost too much information in it, right? So it's not a piece that's being shown often, because you have to have a curator who has a lot of belief in something like this to show it. And I think that's the thing when you make difficult work. It's not easily shown. It's not for everybody.